We'll read our text beginning. Matthew 25, 1 through 13. Then the kingdom of heaven will be comparable to 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were prudent. For when the foolish took their lamps, they had no oil with them. But the prudent took oil in their flask along with their lamps. Now while the bridegroom was delaying, they all got drowsy and began to sleep. But at midnight there was a shout, "Behold, the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all those virgins rose and trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the prudent, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." But the prudent answered, "No, there will not be enough for us and you too. Go instead to the dealers and buy some for yourself." And while they were going away to make purchase, the bridegroom came. And those who were ready went in with him to the wedding feast, and the door was shut. Later the other virgins also came, saying, "Lord, Lord, open up for us." But he answered, "Truly I say to you, I do not know you. Be on alert then, for you do not know the day nor the hour." So this is our text. It looks pretty simple on the surface. And I think most of us who are Bible students understand anything that looks simple on the surface is hiding something much deeper to look at. So what he does basically is he reveals who's going to enter and who's not going to enter. I think that point is pretty simple. I think the depth of this is that it exemplifies Paul's teaching in 1 Corinthians 6:12, where he says, "All things are lawful for me, but not all things are profitable." And that is kind of going to be where we focus in on. God expects more of us than passive morality. The 5 virgins that did not get in were good moral people. They were virgins. You couldn't argue that point against them at all. And yet they missed something. There was something that wasn't right, even though they were moral. So I'm going to quote C.S. Lewis here quickly. He said, "The safest road to hell," we'll do that part again. "The safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts." And that's the path the 5 dull-minded virgins followed. One that was gradual and gentle, and yet landed them where they did not want to be. This is the lesson we want to be sure we get and not follow in their footsteps. So, their preparation obviously fell short. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were prudent. For when the foolish took their lamp, they took no oil with them. But the prudent took oil in a flask along with their lamps. And you're going to have to kind of meditate on it a little later, a little deeper this afternoon as to what the oil represents. We'll hit on it a little bit, but you need to kind of make that for you personally in your walk of life and where you're at. So the dull-minded they just didn't get it. I'm going to say they oversimplified it. They kind of thought, "Dude, I got this Christianity thing. Don't mess with me with all the details and stuff." I'm not exactly sure what all might have run through such a mind, but I do know they did not get it. They did not understand the depth they needed to understand. And in the end, they were excluded from the wedding feast, which is the absolute last thing we want to happen. So perhaps they oversimplified it. That is our tendency, especially men probably. It has been said that men love a checklist. Give me a checklist, give me 5 items, give me 10, I don't care, but give me a checklist, let me check them off, and I go, okay, I got it, and I can go do what I want to do. I don't know exactly what all Christ had in mind, but I know there's some depth there. And he's warning us against being like the foolish or the dull-minded or whatever your translation may say. So again, we have 5 virgins. Great reputation. You can't argue with that. They were invited to the wedding feast. That's also a good indication. Made me think of Revelation 3:1, where he said the angel of the church of Sardis write, "He who has the 7 spirits of God And the 7 stars say this, I know your deeds. You have a name that you're alive, but you are dead. And here are our 5 virgins who we would commend. What do we know to say bad about them other than they didn't get it? They just didn't connect the dots at some level. They lacked the depth of the 5 prudent virgins. And depth is what God is looking for. He's not looking for people who just play the game on the surface and play it right. I wouldn't argue with that. It's just that he's looking for more than going correctly through the motions, if you would. 1 Samuel 16:7, that is the place where Samuel went out to anoint young David as the king to replace Saul. And remember, he saw his older brother who was tall and handsome, and Samuel thought, wow, this has got to be the guy. He looks so good. And God said, nope. Said, I don't want you to look on the outward appearance, hence your good reputation. He said, I look on the heart. And that's where the dull-minded virgins missed it. They had the outer reputation, amen, but they didn't have the heart. They didn't have the depth that they needed. What Christ is looking for, what God is looking for, Matthew 22:37, I know you hear it all the time. And this is one of those key verses that is really important. The problem is, the challenge is when you hear a verse over and over and over again, I know this happens. It begins to sound like the teacher in the Charlie Brown cartoons. How many times have you heard me say Matthew 7:21? I go back and look at old sermons sometime, and I'm going back 30 years sometime and looking at old sermons. I mean, I'm going all the way back to my beginning. It was Matthew 7:21, Matthew 7:21, Matthew 7:21. I say it so much, Allie said, I'm going to put that on your tombstone. I'm like, that'd be pretty cool, you know? I won't get to see it though, but it'll be pretty cool. But after a while, all you hear is womp, 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 womp. And that's the part where the virgins didn't get it. The dull-minded didn't get it. So Christ has said, you shall love the Lord with your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. This is the greatest and foremost command. And therein, somehow, and I'll let you figure that out in detail because it's a parable. We can make up a lot of stuff there. But somehow the dull-minded virgins didn't get that. Somehow they thought, well, I showed up, I had a lamp, what's wrong? But they didn't make that deeper connection. Great reputation, good moral women or girls, however you envision that, and yet rejected from the wedding feast. So we run into this from time to time. Well, I'm not doing anything wrong. Well, that's a good step. That's a move in the right direction, incidentally. Absolutely a good strategy for beginning. 1 Corinthians 6:12, Paul said, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are profitable. So what he's looking for are those who are seeking spiritual profitability. Can I say it that way? It's not just is what I'm doing lawful, but what I'm doing profitable in the eyes of him who enlisted me as a soldier in his service, or he who redeemed me to be a servant in his kingdom. And what I do and things I'm doing, are they profitable for his goal and his agenda and what he wants done? That's the thing. Are we moving on that upward way? Are we just going, man, I've searched the scripture and there's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. There's nothing wrong with going to a ball game. And I'd say, amen, there's nothing, that's good moral entertainment right there. Is it profitable for spiritual development? I know we get into a lot of little nuanced areas now because none of us are going to say all entertainment is wrong, but we are going to kind of put it real quick and kind of keep that part short. It's kind of like food. You got to have food, right? Now, when does food cross the line from responsible stewardship to gluttony? Now, when does food cross the line from responsible stewardship to being an irresponsible steward? And again, you can't just do a cookie cutter answer to that. If you're a diabetic, the answer is different for you than it is for somebody else. If you're allergic to one thing, then the answer is different for you than it is for somebody else. That's why you really got to do that personal meditation. So the dull-minded just didn't get what was going on. They kind of had this shallow, I'll show up for the party approach kind of thing or something. And their morality was not proof that they were diligently seeking God. They're called the foolish virgins in most texts. I found one that said dull-minded, and I kind of liked that. I went and looked at the word prudent and some stuff like that. But I know word studies are just so exciting, and you're really disappointed that we didn't spend 15 minutes there. I'll let you do that on your own entertainment later on. But Jesus and Paul are both challenging us about opting for the bare minimum. Yeah, I'm doing okay. That kind of thing. Trying to do just enough. That's dull-minded thinking. And I know it's hard to figure out how it works, but I'll promise you this. Life won't let you get by with that. Life is going to challenge us and bring us up to the line on that and say, okay, now you got to make a decision. So we're going to be intentionally consumed with God. That's the way you want to do it. I'm back to Matthew 22:37 again, because this is one of those key verses. It's all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. That is the absolute most important thing. So it's more than just, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not out here doing X, Y, Z sin. I'm not smoking weed and robbing 7-Elevens or whatever. It's kind of funny because when we think about sin, we think about what I'm going to call really evil, extreme, obvious sins. And we forget that lukewarm's a sin. We forget that not treating our neighbor as ourselves and practicing the golden rule is a sin. We forget that we give an account for every idle word that comes out of our mouth. And the next verse says, by our words we'll be judged. By our words we'll be justified, we'll be condemned. That's Matthew 12:36-37, if you want to go look that up. So when we do that, it's more than just, I'm not doing anything wrong. It's okay. That's great. That's really good, wouldn't it? Wouldn't Pine Bluff be like the most awesome community in America if 98% of our citizens, I won't go for 100%, but 98 of our citizens could go, I don't do anything wrong. I obey the speed limit. I pay my local taxes. I respect everybody I deal with. Wouldn't that be awesome? But that wouldn't be proof they were all right with God. And so when we get to this idea, because we want to make it easy, that's kind of a human failing, I guess, where I'm just not doing anything wrong. Am I minimizing? Or am I really, really seeking to be the best Christian I can be? Like we sing in the song, I'm pressing on the upward way. Am I really doing it? So James 4:17 says, one who knows to do the right thing to do and doesn't do it, to him it's sin. And there we get into an interesting area, isn't it? And this is where you're going to have to individualize. This is where you sit down with yourself and your scriptures in the quiet of the afternoon, after you've had your meal, preferably before you fall off into your nap. Though, let me play a little psychology with you for just a moment. That little space where you're sitting down and you're comfortable. Oh, this feels good. I love my recliner, right? And now you got this space between here and the snoring. I don't know, that theta level, something or another, your alpha, betas, whatever. That's a really, really super good place for inner reflection. It really, really is. That I don't know what to call it. Now, it does have scientific names, but anyway. So when you sit down for your nap and you're starting to drift off and you feel yourself really relaxing, that's the time to go, okay, self, let's talk about self and get in that zone. So what we're doing is he's calling us to intentional growth. Again, all things are lawful. We're good. But not all things edify. Now, I know edify is not a word we use all the time in our southern language here, But it means to improve, to grow, to build up. That's all it means. And this is something that we actively engage. We go after it aggressively. So I'm pressing on the upward way, new heights I'm gaining day by day, still praying as onward bound, Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. But that's not passive. You're scratching and clawing, if you would, to make that higher ground. It's that hard look in the mirror, which the dull-minded virgins missed that. They didn't really look into that deeper place. John 15:2, every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes it so that it may bear more. Notice what he said. He said, every branch in me that is diseased and has the blight and is about to cause a bad infection with the rest of the branches, I take away. Not what he said, is it? He said, every branch in me that does not bear fruit. You can have a branch on a grapevine and it be out there and look healthy and have a lot of green leaves, and you're thinking, well, this one's growing good. This is going to be great. And you get to the end of the season and it never produced much or any fruit. And those are the ones that, what did God say? Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes it away. Now, if it bears fruit, he's still going to do some work with it. He's going to prune it. Why? Because what is he looking for? He's looking for more fruit, right? He's not a minimalist. He's not like, if I get a grape off of this branch, that'll be fine. He's looking for more. Think about the parable where the one talent man said, I knew you to be stern. I knew you to reap where you didn't sow, and so on and so forth. Yes. So avoiding sin is good. Let me be very clear with that, man. That is absolutely necessary. That is an essential, elementary, kindergarten level step. But there's more. So we can avoid sin. I have an idea. Every one of us here know people who don't profess Christianity at all, yet they have an aversion to lying, or maybe they have aversion to drinking or cursing. They just like, no, I don't do that. But they're not seeking God either. So the question for us in the parable of the virgins is, are we living connected to God? Are we passionate about bearing fruit? Are we just trying to get by? I think if I do level 3, I'll get on into heaven. You can leave level 8, 9, and 10 to somebody else. That's not the passion. That's not the, I love God with all my heart, all my soul, all my being. So Christ said his food was to do the will of the Father. So it's a focus, it's a priority, it's an attitude, it's a way of living. He came down from heaven to do the Father's will. In 2 Timothy 2:4, he said, no soldier in active service entangles himself in the affairs of everyday life, so that he can please the one who enlisted him as a soldier. Now, is Paul trying to tell us some military philosophy here? Or is Paul trying to tell us something about spirituality? Now, of course, I would say Paul is trying to tell us something about spirituality. And what he's telling us is while you live in the world, you're not of the world. And you don't get so involved in the world that God looks down from heaven and goes, that's not why Christ went to Calvary to redeem you to do that. Now, I get it. I know the games people play. Are you telling me I can never watch TV? No. I agree. Christ did not go to Calvary so I could watch TV or put a pretty picture of my face on Facebook, which we know pretty part isn't going to happen, right? But anyway, he didn't go to Calvary so I could do that. But he's not saying you can never ever look at Facebook. But at the same time, it's like that food analogy. Christ did not go to Calvary so I could eat. He went to Calvary so I could serve in his local vineyard and do the work he wanted done. But I do have to eat. But at some point, food becomes the object and no longer the supporting thing. You need a little rest. You need some recreation. You need your sleep. Absolutely. But at some point, it becomes such a big part of our lives that we're no longer serving him, pleasing him who enlisted us, and trying to do just enough. I'm sorry, that's not going to please him. Growing Christians are not minimalist. They don't look for the lowest thing. I heard a speaker once say, he said, I told my kids, if you shoot for a high goal and you miss it, I'm good with that. You shoot for a low goal and you hit it, we got a problem. Did that register? If you shoot for a really, really high goal and you miss it, it's okay. If you shoot for the moon and you miss, you may hit a star. That's pretty good stuff right there. But if you shoot for a really low goal and hit it, now we're the dull-minded. We're the foolish virgins. We're the ones that just aren't connecting the dots. So they come to a rude awakening. He says, I don't know you. Now, they're virgins. They've got a good reputation. We know nothing critical to say about them other than they didn't think deep enough. They didn't take it serious enough. They were good people, but they didn't have a relationship that carried them through that level they needed to be at. They had checked the obvious boxes, which is great, but they forgot to turn the page and go deeper, because it's not just about checking the boxes. It's about loving God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your being. So Christ would later say in John 10:27, my sheep hear my voice and I know them and they follow me. The problem with the dull-minded was they weren't diligently engaged. They weren't really, really following him. That wasn't central priority, the focus of their life. They hoped they'd make a moderate effort and it would work. And they found out it didn't work. So we're called to die. That's a tough one, isn't it? It shouldn't be, but the way Christ speaks so often, it's a little mysterious. Take up your cross and follow me. That's a call to die. He who would save his own life will lose it. He who loses his life will find it. That's a call to die. Don't worry about those who can kill the body and after that have no more they can do to you. I'll tell you who to fear, him who can kill the body and destroy the soul in hell. There's your call to die to self. Even Paul, a little more clear in Romans, like 12:2, present your body a living sacrifice. We're called to die. Now, those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. They no longer just show up to be cute. They show up to serve. They show up to work. And the dull-minded virgins, they didn't get it. They didn't put it together. So we ask, am I diligently seeking him, or am I merely avoiding the wrong? Avoiding wrong is a good step, but it wasn't enough for our virgins. We need to be deliberate, intentional, premeditated. I like lining up three words like that. Matthew 25:13, he says, be on the alert, for you do not know the day or the hour. And then we start thinking, oh yeah, when's Jesus coming back? Now I'm going to tell you my personal thought on this. I won't stay here but 30 seconds if that long. I'm not much concerned about when he's coming back. Because in my opinion, you and I are going to go before he comes back. Now, I could be wrong. I get that. But, for 2,000 years, people have been dying. And he hasn't come back yet. I believe he's coming back. But I really believe you and I are going to go meet him before he comes back to meet us. Now, if I'm wrong, we'll all know it. And when the trumpet sounds and the skies open up, y'all can all look at me and go, you were wrong. And that'll be cool. I'll be glad. Wouldn't that be awesome to be here when that happens? Unless you're in the cemetery. Think about it, because the dead rise first. You're in the cemetery looking at your old relative's grave, and all of a sudden he comes back. No, I don't want to be there when that happens. So being ready is not an accident. It's not something you're just going to stumble into. So how do we provide that extra oil for our lamps? I'm going to tell you, start with the little bitty things, because who's faithful in what is least is also faithful in much. And here's what I'm going to suggest, because it'd be a whole nother lesson Just examine the things of your daily life. Wherever you're at, you're a kid in school, that's cool. Just look at where you're at there. You're in middle age. I love picking on my daughter. Then you look at what you got on. You're like older people and you're more retired kind of age-ish. Okay, look at that. Don't just look at where you're at and go, how can I use this to serve and glorify my Father? And I am of the opinion that unless we're talking about something immoral, then they've got a different story. You can take most of the activities of life and you can use them in the service of the Father. You just have to learn to really be honest about what your motive and your agenda is there. So you're going to like love your neighbors yourself. It's okay. Simple enough. Galatians 6:10, do good unto all people. How do you treat other people? So I'm running down, getting lunch from my dad. He loves Subway for whatever reason. Turkey, foot long, cut it in half, got 2 days meal. How am I treating the people behind the counter? That's it. Am I letting my light shine? Am I being polite, courteous, and considerate? Or am I being cranky? Am I one of those customers where you walk in and they go, oh, not him again. Wish you'd find someplace else to go. Those kind of things. The way you treat other people. Am I really treating other people in a manner that I would appreciate being treated? This is everything. I can look at my wife and go, okay, am I really treating her in a manner I want to be treated? Now, you really got to be careful here because rationalization has set in. I'll tell you a story of a member who's passed away. He was over on 28th Street. A couple of you connect the dots, not too many of you. But he could sit in class right about where Sharon's at. I'm not talking about Mark. I'm not talking about Bob. But anyway, man, he could be cranky and gruff. A couple of you going, oh, now some of you going, wait, I can think about 3 or 4 of them. And an occasion arose where he got on a hobby horse, and I was pressed to just say, no, we're not talking about that anymore. We're done with that. And shut him down in class. This manly man was in my office the next day, whining like a kindergartner because I hurt his feelings. What are we really doing? You see, when I talk about, well, I treat my wife fine. If I was her, I'd be proud to be her. Yeah, really? Are you sure? Be careful when you ask, am I really treating other people the way I want them to treat me? Because we'll lie to us on that question. And God's not going to buy our lie. God's going to go, you're lying, and liars don't get into heaven. Spiritual growth is actively seeking to please God. And what I'm doing, and the way I'm treating the person behind the counter, the way I'm treating the person I just walked past at Walmart, the way I'm treating my family, my extended family, does God look at me and go, that's good. I like him. If not, we're in trouble. Now, the good news in all this is that we can avoid hearing, I do not know you. Now, it takes the courage to get into self, but we can avoid it, and we can really, really look at ourselves. So we're right at the end. Readiness is proactive, very, very proactive. You're planning, you're diligent, you're really engaging the process, not just sitting around thinking, well, I sure would like to do better. You're making a plan for it somehow. The dull-minded, yeah, you got good intentions, and they may be moral, but their lack of thinking deeply shuts the door, and they miss out on the wedding feast. What he is he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. And that's, I think, one of the main lessons we get out of the foolish virgins. They just didn't take it serious enough. They just thought, this will work out. This is cool. I got this. And it turns out they didn't got this. Are you diligently seeking? That's the thought I want to leave with you. You ponder the dull-minded virgins. If you're seeking, and you're working, and you're growing, that's where you're supposed to be. If you're not, it's time for a change. If we can help you in a public way, let us do so. While together we stand and sing.